Everyone. Today we will talk about IT Academy, how it could be done, what we need to do to organize it, and what kind of tools we need to use for that. So let's just start to think about it. Like why IT company need to have IT Academy? So there could be a couple of reasons for that. For example, IT company decided to grow and in the local market there are not enough resources to do so. For example, IT company could see that in the current world um, it will be required to have additional 100 of developers in next like 3 years. So how it could be done? There are a couple of ways to do so. So we could hire some resources from another companies so they will be already trained, but the way of, let's say, budget that we need to include into it will be very big, even if you will grab them from the freelance or from any other kind of place. So another possible opportunity for IT company is to have strategy to grow those resources by that IT company specialists. So how it could be done? So IT company could open something called um, like a learning center or academy, and that academy could do the following. So it should look for, let's say, potentially good resources in the market who could potentially become in the future good specialists. Like for example, at this moment, if IT company will look for additional resources, could look for IT courses. It could look in universities for IT specialities and other possible places. So in that case, IT company could just find, let's say, potentially good people who in the future could become a good project manager, good developer, good designer, or wherever specialists that they will need to have. So what IT company could do next with that? So IT company could organize some kind of short course. So it could be, let's say, like a 3 weeks course or a 4 week course. And that course will cover just some basics of that technology stack that IT company would like to cover. So for example, if we will talk about the Salesforce, could be situation when some very basic, let's say, functionality will be given and some basic training will be given to persons whom we would like to train, and those persons will actually be able to uh, pass through this training. So the quick idea here is in the following: because it's a short-term training, so and it's cover very basics. So that means that IT company to do the training could use, let's say, junior or associate level resources to perform that kind of training, right? So that means that it's not a big investment in terms of IT company. So during the training, what is the, let's say, main goal for those kind of persons who will be involved from the IT company side? It's to check from that list of persons who was selected for the training, who of them have good, let's say, hard skill, who could learn fast, who have problem solving skills, and who could, let's say, show his good soft level skills. In that case, IT company will see, for example, from the list of 10 people, there are five of them who IT company could invest into those persons, right? Who looks promising for IT company, and in that case, IT company could continue to educate those persons as a part of, let's say, internal education program. In that case, in terms of the budget that IT company need to spend, the initial effort or initial budget that will be included, it's not so big because the actual person who will teach a new student, like for example, in our case, let's name it a mentor, should have something like an associate level because like for juniors it's too earlier for them to mentor someone else, but if you could see that that person with associate level, so that means that he could, let's say, teach others, right? So it's at least he know some best practices, he knows some industry standards and things like this. So in that case, we could assign a couple of associate, let's say, mentors, and those mentors could have, let's say, one additional hour per day for them to take care about new students. So in that case, let's say after half of a year or 3 months, we will get a situation when our student will growing up from a student to junior developer. Let us just add it into the diagram. So once that person will get the training, so the company will already get a junior. And then it depends on the company culture, what will happen next with a junior developer. Usually in IT companies, we could have something like this, which is called skill matrix, right? When for each level we could understand what kind of skill we need to know. Like for example, for the junior level, we need to know some very basics of Apex, we need to know some basics of Visualforce, we need to know some basics of LVC. For the middle, we need to understand what is, let's say, REST API, we need to know how to write it, like we need to understand what is the sharings and all the stuff, right? So it's just in terms of skill matrix. If we have it in IT company, so that means that our, let's say, juniors whom we just educate will understand how they could pass that ways from junior to middle and to senior. And usually in IT companies, like when they invest into education of new person, right? So they usually provide such kind of contract, which is usually longer than the usual contract if you will just hire junior, let's say, from another place. And in that case, what company trying to do, it's trying to save its own investment to make sure that, like the junior will help the IT company to get some work done, let's say, and some profit. So once we'll have that, let's say, skill matrix, right? So our person know what he needs to learn and to get new level, right? And we could show to him from that point of time what kind of, let's say, steps he needs to follow to be able to grow to the senior. It could be salary roadmap, it could be, let's say, bonuses roadmap, right? And things like this. And we could discover to him what kind of opportunities he will get if he will continue work with that company. So let's say at this moment we covered basic question like, say, why IT company need to have it if IT company decided to grow, right? And what is, let's say, basic behavior in terms of how they need to do so, right? So at this moment we just discussed it from where we could grab mentors, what kind of their level could be, what is should be, let's say, basics for their education. And now let's discuss what kind of tools we need to use for that. Because we are working with our students, we need to provide to them, let's say, materials, some videos, some quizzes for us to make sure that, like they're getting some kind of best information that we could provide to them, right? Because to learn at this moment, we have a tons of different ways. We have a way to watch videos in YouTube, we could read through documentation, we could read through some articles and so on and so forth, right? And that means that all of our, let's say, persons who we would like to train, if they will do it by themselves, they will have different speed, right, of education, right? Because someone will look through the documentation, he will understand something faster, but like then he will forget it because there will be tons of information. Then another person will do everything step by step, but it will be too slowly, right? And at this moment, let's say if we estimated that we should convert student to junior in 3 months, then like we will have not enough time to teach him, right? And to make sure that we are up to speed, right? We have the process aligned. We could already predefine learning materials for that person, right? So at this moment, we already have a basics as a part of our skill matrix, like what kind of, let's say, topics need to be covered for that person to learn and to become a junior, right? We already will have it in the skill matrix. And that means that when our person will learn everything, he will be already as per grade that we have in our IT company with a level of junior, right? So that means that we already know what kind of, let's say, topics we need to use. So then we need to prepare those materials. And usually in IT companies, we could have something called Center of Excellence, right? So it's a board of experts who actually creating this skill matrix, right? So when we creating that skill matrix, we could understand, let's say, what kind of skills we need to include, as we just mentioned. For example, for the junior, in terms of Salesforce, Rush should be, for example, basic epics, right? So when we know what is a basic epics, we could find some article or a good video, right, in internet, and just put it here or we near with a topic, so it will show to that person, like what is a level he needs to earn into getting that skill, right? So at this moment, like if it's basic epics, so that video or that article will explain to him, like what is the borders of the topic, right? Because let's say the skill could be very big, right? And like if in terms of the skills, we will have something like, for example, Service Cloud, right? If here we should just understand, for example, case assignment or web to case, right? So then on middle level, we need to understand omni-channel, like, and so on and so forth. We need to understand on each level where our borders, right? Because if we don't have those borders, so then it will be not understandable for that person in that level where he need to actually finish, like with this specific topic. So once we will have all these articles prepared, right, we could have even Google Sheet, right, where we will just have all of them listed, right? And once the mentor will work with a person, so that person could actually learn that material, right, perform some practice task based on it. Like, for example, if you will be able to find appropriate trailheads, right, so it could fulfill that requirement. And then, like mentor could validate that, like its trailheads was passed by that person, and that person understand what he learned. So that means that mentor could actually perform some kind of let's say brief discussion with that person and ask him about what he just learned. In that case, that person, let's say, will pass short exam, right, on this specific skill, right? And that person who is the mentor will make a checkbox here, like that junior is passed at that specific, let's say, assessment to the skill one, right? So that means that, like it will be marked as green. So then it will be next one, like at the end, when the last skill will be passed, we could potentially give level of junior to that person. But sometimes in the real world, what we could see, like when the person learned skill one and then like completely focused on the skill two and then completely focused on the skill three, at the end, like the person could not remember anything from the skill one, right? And because of that, sometimes at the variant of education, there could be some additional assessment, right? And that person should, let's say, refresh his knowledges in his head to make sure that he will pass this level assessment. So in that case, as I just mentioned, we could simply use Google Sheet for that. And in that case, we will be able to use it as an initial tool, right? Of course, in the internet, we have a lot of LMS. We have a functionality that allow us to create a quizzes, create a task, like and do all this stuff. So it's up to the IT company to decide what kind of tool to use. But at this moment, we, let's say, specified the very basics that we need to have for us to be able to run IT Academy. So let's think one more time through our diagram, right? So we need to have a source from where we could get potential, let's say, leads, whom we could later convert into our potential employees, right? So we need to be able to, let's say, filter them, right? So that's why we are using this short pre-course. So then we have a dedicated resource who will control how we teach those students and will control the quality of education. Then we have this basic skill matrix that allowing us to cover all of kind of use cases where we explain how that person will grow from level to level, what kind of, let's say, borders we have for each skill between levels and all this stuff, right? And then we will have a situation when we will have some, for example, assessment to that level, right? So after that, once we just got that person and he already involved and he know what is our corporate standards, right? So then we could continue to work with that person and ask him, like to pass through one level to another. But it's totally, let's say, different story, right? At this moment, we are mostly talking about situation when IT company use it IT Academy to be able to grow the number of employees, right? And then, like internal education when that new employee is already a junior, it's, let's say, a regular company um, process. So at this moment, thank you for the attention. It was, let's say, some very brief discussion, let's say, or overview of the process. If you guys will have any kind of questions, please ask them in the comment and we could have conversation started from there. Cheers.